Yeah, thank you for coming to the presentation. Default Storage, Fast Track to Databricks Data Intelligence Platform. Really appreciate you show up at the lunchtime to listen to the session. Just a general product safe harbor statement. This is just saying that many of these released features or release timeline may be subject to change. So my name is Emma Liu. I'm a product manager here at Databricks and working on default storage. And my domain focus is on Delta Lake, ingestion, and database as a service, as well as complex system design.
Hi, and I'm Samrat Ray. I'm a senior staff product manager focused on enterprise security. I lead the enterprise security product group over here at Databricks. Prior to Databricks, I was a group PM at Google Cloud, where I launched several core security products like VPC service controls, as well as storage products like Cloud SQL. I was also founding PM of Istio, which is a fairly successful open source product. Here at Databricks, I focus on security of the entire platform, specifically on serverless security, including networking, encryption, data protection, and privacy.
Okay, before I start the presentation, I just want to see a show of hands. Raise your hand if you have ever set up a new Databricks account, or a new workspace, or a Unity catalog. Oh, wow, I actually see like everyone here has done it before. And this is definitely the right session for you. You will see how simple that we're making your journey in the future. Here's a quick glance of the agenda. First, we're going to look at the background and why we started to working on default storage and what is default storage. Then I'm going to show you a few of the use cases and demo. And then Samara is going to go into the architecture and deep dive into the security. And then we're going to talk about the roadmap and vision and key takeaways. All right. So in 2020, Databricks has pioneered the data lakehouse architecture. And in light of the latest Gen AI innovation, we also added the intelligence engine in the lakehouse so that it augmented into the Databricks data intelligence platform. And we've got a tremendous adoption since 2020, and today, 74% of the global enterprises have adopted the lakehouse. And some of the quick stats about the lakehouse adoption, and Delta Lake Uniform and Delta Sharing are the two key components for the lakehouse, and we've achieved 4+ exabytes processed every day today. And more than 10,000 companies are using the data intelligence platform. And we also have an open platform and about more than 32,000 recipients using the Delta Sharing. So as we're innovating from the lakehouse to the data intelligence platform, the deployment architecture has also been, we're improving and innovating on the deployment architecture. And to start with, we have traditionally, you bring your cluster and your storage and you manage, and it's a shared responsibility between Databricks and you. And then we heard quite a bit of the feedback that the configuration and everything is very complex, and we introduced the serverless compute so that you get this auto-optimized compute already provisioned for you, right? Some of the benefits include it's super instant, and there's zero operational overhead, and then you increase your productivity, and it's also a lower TCO, right? So with that, more than 6,000 customers have been adopting the serverless compute. Now the question remains, what happens to the storage layer? So even if the compute are provisioned for you, you still need to go into your cloud account to configure the storage bucket and also the networking, security, and all those configuration settings in the Cloud Console, and then also go to Databricks to configure it. And these steps there are many steps involved in the Cloud Console that you have to go through in order to start provisioning and having a Databricks account. And these pain points are not just for a new Databricks account, but also if you have an existing Databricks account, if you create a new workspace, and if you create a Unity catalog, you still need to provide these storage in your Cloud Console. And think about if you're expanding into multiple regions and multiple workspaces, these are repeated steps that takes many days. And these are the problems not just in day one journey when you're setting up these workspaces, right? What about ongoing management? On day 2, what about their problems with your storage? You need to look into the incidents that are related to your storage, right? How about backup DR, and how about optimizing your data tiering and storage tiering? So all of these are ongoing management that you will have to spend much time on, and we want to look at how to simplify this journey for you. So think about this scenario, right? Meet Sally. She's your favorite Gen AI ML scientist. And Sally's company, in light of the latest Gen AI movement, they also want to push out their AI-powered products to their customers. And she has been assigned to implement this end-to-end machine learning pipeline, also including large language models. And there's really a push on the time to market in her company. So the timeline is short. And what she really needs is this instant access to foundation models in data intelligence platform. And she also needs to have a secured and isolated environment or workspace with the auto-provisioned storage and compute, and also unit catalog is already configured. And of course, these environments need to be secure so that the data storage and the access and also sharing data out, everything involved in this lifecycle is very secure, and she does not need to spend time on that because she's not a security expert. And she also wants this automatic maintenance, right? She does not want to waste time on maintaining all the data layout and storage. At the end of the day, of course, she wants this simple dashboard so that she can report to the leadership about the cost for the pipelines and the workloads and the data assets. So what can we do for Sally? In this new era of data and AI, it really demands a new option so that we can democratize data and AI for many data practitioners. And this is, I'm super excited to introduce default storage. This is the option that we designed for democratizing data and AI for data practitioners. So what is default storage? It is a one-click setup for all the new workspaces or new catalogs. And for these workspaces and catalogs, it comes with pre-configured storage. And once you set it up under seconds, you can forget about it, and there's no ongoing cloud management. And a quick few benefits of the default storage is super fast that you can get to the data intelligence platform. There's no cloud infrastructure, and it's simple and efficient. You'll get fast onboarding into the lakehouse environment, and also it optimized with the serverless compute. It is secure by default. Later, Samara is going to go deep into the security architecture, and we've designed this with the security in mind, and it comes out of the box. And with default storage, you will get this unified data access so that all your billing and observability is in one place. So really, the fastest way to get to Databricks Data Intelligence Platform is the default storage and serverless compute together. Now, I'm going to talk about a few of the use cases and show you how simple it is to use default storage. First, Summit Test Drive. So any of you have already picked up the Summit Test Drive? There's a postcards at the Databricks booth. And if you have not picked up any, you can pick up some of these invite codes at the end of this talk. So what is a Summit Test Drive? So it is a playground for all of the Summit contents. It already comes with the storage and compute already pre-configured for you. You don't need any cloud account or credit card, or you don't need to be a cloud admin, and you can get started in seconds with playing with the Databricks environment. And it is a special build for the Summit. So it comes with actually $100 free credits with the free compute and storage, and you can use it for this duration from June 10th to 24th. And you can try many of the new functionalities in Databricks, including the foundation models, as well as Databricks Assistant. All right, now I'm going to do a quick demo on the Summit Test Drive. Okay, let me get out of the presentation mode and go to the sign up page. And I have a invite code in my hand. I will type in the invite code. All right, I am going to continue with just Google login and use my Databricks email. And now it will recognize there's an account already, so I will join this account. And there's a geolocation that you can choose between North America and Europe, and I would keep at the North America region. I'll continue with the setup. All right, now in the background, it is provisioning the Databricks test drive for you. Okay, under 10 seconds, we have this new environment. You don't have any. You don't need to have any cloud account, and you can start playing with Databricks. All right. Let me just upload a new data set. I'll use this. The fastest way to ingest the table is I can actually use the local file upload UI and browse, let's say, a CSV file. Let me choose the CSV file, which is airports related to airports information. And as you can see, there's already a 3-level Unity catalog already set up for you. There's a catalog of workspace, and the table is automatically populated with the names, suggested name. So and you can also see the sample data sets as there's a serverless compute already running in the background. Now I'm going to click the create table. Now in the background, the serverless compute is cranking up, and then it's converting the CSV file to a Delta table in the Databricks environment. So as you can see, this environment has almost all of the features in Databricks, and you can play around and then see all the latest Summit content. Now the table is created, and if we click on the detail, you'll see that the storage location is at default storage, right? What I want to do now is just create a SQL query and just query this data set that I just ingested in this new environment. I'm a little bit lazy, so I do want to see whether Databricks Assistant can help me with suggesting a query. Let's see, I want to suggest ask the assistant to suggest a SQL query to find types of airports. Okay, let's take a look. Oh, interesting. Let's use the SQL query that's suggested from the Databricks Assistant and see what we have. Okay. Now, the SQL query that's generated by the assistant tells me that, okay, there are these 7 types of airport types. The next thing I want to show is, let's say it's in a Genie data room, which is another AI-assisted business intelligence data room. And then we can also play with the data sets I just created, right? I can actually create a new Genie data room. Let's give a title for the room. And you can choose the default warehouse for powering this Genie data room, and also add a table. Now what I can do is find the table that I just created, which is the airport sample data. It's already selected. I can also give this data room a few of the sample questions, for example, types of airports. And let's save, add to the Genie room, and save the new room here. Now what I want to show is, let's say if I type in the question, types of airports, and see what Genie tells me. Awesome. Ginny tells me there is 7 types of airport, and on top of that, it actually counts what are the numbers of these types of airports in this data set. And in this Genie room, you can also see the generated SQL query, how it's actually coming out with this result. Okay, if I go back to the account that I just created, you can also go to the playground where you can play with many of these foundational models that's already built in with the Databricks. And for example, I want to ask the DBRX foundation model to tell me what are the public data sets for airport, and enter the question. And now the model tells me, okay, there are 5 places I can find more information about airport. Yeah, this is super exciting and fun, right? This is the end of this test drive demo, and as I mentioned, there are many, many functionalities that's available in this test drive, and you can get the invite code and try it out later. Okay, I'm going to come back to the presentation. The next part, if you have an existing account already, you can also use default storage to create new workspaces. And these new workspaces also come with a simple pre-configured storage and also serverless compute. And it starts up under a minute. And let's say if you have self-service teams that they want to create their own workspaces and have an isolated environment, this is a great place that you can start a simple workspace. You only need to give a name of the workspace and provide the region, and then keep the option as the default compute and storage. And the third use case is in your existing account, you can use default storage to set up new unit catalog. And what you need to do is just use default storage when you set up the catalog, after you give the name, and keep the type as standard, and click create, and that's it. So in this default storage for unit catalog, it comes with the storage already needed for your data assets. And think about if you're creating a new data project, this is a great way for you to get started very fast. All right, I'm going to do a very quick demo for these 2 use cases. I can actually go back to the environment that I just created. So this is also an existing Databricks account. First demo I'm going to show is creating a new catalog powered by default storage. And in this environment, I click on the catalog, and in this UI, create catalog, and give a catalog name, and keep it standard, and click on use default storage, and click create. Instantaneously, we got this new catalog that's already there and ready for you to ingest data and or copy data over and do all your analysis for your new environment. And if you look at the details here, the catalog is based on a default storage. All right, my last demo is about a new workspace creation. So I will actually show you a new recorded video. Let's go to this one. All right, so let me restart from the beginning. Actually, this is not the right video. Let me go to the folder here. Okay. Now this is a recorded demo for the new workspace creation journey. And once you're in the account console, you can click on Create Workspace and provide the workspace name and choose the region that you want to deploy this workspace. And click on our advanced options. So the default is using the serverless compute and default storage. And just click Create. And that's it. Just one step, you'll get a new workspace provisioning. And once you finish provisioning, you can take a look at the new workspace, and it will give you a very similar look and feel with the test drive. You can play with all of the foundation models and manual data analysis using the serverless compute, and it's powered by the default storage. All right, this is the end of my 3 demo. Let me go back to the presentation. So I've shown the very simple way to get started with the 3 journey. One is using the test drive. You don't need to have any cloud account. You can have a new Databricks account to play with all of the Databricks Summit content, and also showed you this new catalog and new workspace, and you can create these in your existing account once you're enrolled in the private preview. And now I'm going to hand it over to Samrat, and Samrat is going to talk about how simple it is with the security setup. Right.
Thank you, Emma. So far we talked about how simple things were, but there's a lot happening under the hood, and I'm here to reveal what's happening under the hood. And we aren't just making your life simple in terms of like usability, like, hey, I don't have to do a lot of work. Sure, that's happening. But we are also making your life simple in terms of how are we securing things for you, right? So such that you don't have to worry about security in today's day. There are so many news about breaches, and how are we taking up some of that responsibility such that you don't have to think about it. So just a quick view of what Databricks looks like, right? From a pure component view perspective, it's a bit of a right to left diagram, but you've got clients that can talk to your control plane, which effectively is your APIs. That's your entry point. That's your front door. That's where you got Unity Catalog. So you effectively, for security purposes, you want all access happening via the Unity Catalog. You don't want anybody typically going straight to the left-hand side and talking to your cloud storage. That's a bad idea. It's a broad access without any kind of auditing or detailed auditing or any kind of fine-grained control, right? So you want all your access happening there. And then that access will eventually lead to some compute being fired up, either on your network, which is what we call as classic compute, or on serverless. And then that would talk to storage. And the storage typically has been your storage. Now, today we'll talk about how does default storage work and how does it secure your data along with serverless compute put together, right? So with default storage, the security is baked in based upon industry standard best practices around encryption and isolation, right? So your data, first of all, is always encrypted and isolated at rest. And we'll talk in details about how your data is encrypted at rest with your own key hierarchy. The second is your data stored in default storage can only be accessed via Unity Catalog and only on authorized workspaces. So it's isolated automatically for you. You don't have to go in and configure a whole bunch of stuff in order to isolate it to your specific workloads. Third, all of this is secured by default, right? Like you don't have to configure anything in order to get this level of security that we're going to talk about. So let's dive in one level deeper to understand what each of these pillars mean. So when we talk about protecting your data, we protect your data with defense in depth. And what does defense in depth means? We have got isolation of your data at rest and protecting your data at rest to make sure that your data belongs to you and is completely isolated from any other customer's data while it is at rest. It's also protected from any access to the underlying storage API layer. So if somebody has S3 access, whether it's a Databricks employee or somebody else who has gotten access to an S3 access token, they cannot access your data. The second thing is isolation and access. How do we make sure that your data can only be accessed by an authorized user coming in from an authorized workspace and the user itself is also coming in from an authorized network? Like, how do we keep this whole chain of security and make that easy for you to establish without you having to build very sophisticated security infrastructure yourself? So let's talk about isolation at rest. For isolating at rest, your data is, Emma showed that your data could either be a catalog or a workspace. Each catalog or workspace is protected by its own key hierarchy, which has its own like catalog level key, or you could replace the catalog key with a workspace key, right? And this key hierarchy is always rooted in a root key for your account. The root key itself can be protected with a customer managed key. We don't have the customer managed key in the preview that is running yet, but it's coming soon, right? So you can bring your own key as the root of your key hierarchy, and then we automatically use that key, and for each catalog, again, we create keys that are for each entity. So every time you create a table or a model or a volume, then there is a key that is created. These keys never leave the key service, so they are protected such that they cannot be exfiltrated, the keys. And then, for unauthorized workspaces, we derive file-level keys in memory for you from this key hierarchy that we have for each of the catalogs. The file-level keys that are derived in memory are used in memory again and are not stored. So again, it mitigates exfiltration risks by keeping them in memory. The last thing is the file key, then the file keys themselves are used to actually encrypt your data at rest. So as you can imagine, if someone doesn't have access to the entire key hierarchy and are not in the right kind of workspaces, then they don't have access to your encryption keys. So even if your token, say access token, was leaked or exfiltrated, whether it's a user access token or service access token, that doesn't mean that somebody can access your data from a workspace where it was not attached to through an explicit Unity catalog operation, whether you have shared it by default or you have used catalog binding to say, here is the explicitly enumerated workspace from where my catalog can be accessed, right? So that's what we use. One more thing, like how do we know that this is your catalog? This is your workspace and this is your compute? We have multiple layers of protection there, which is we make sure it's coming from the right network. So we know that it's coming with the right private endpoint. For example, our serverless networks, we know it's coming from a serverless network or from your classic network. We understand that from the private endpoint. Then for each workspace, especially on serverless, we are issuing certificates, which these certificates are not compromisable even if your workload is compromised. So those certificates are used to authenticate your workspace ID. So we know it's your workspace, right? With a strong authentication. And then we have application level tokens, which also authenticate your clusters and your workloads, et cetera, to our control plane. So all of that is used to understand that it's your workspace and which workspace it is. And it's only under those conditions do we allow these keys, the file-level keys, to be materialized in memory for compute running on that workspace. So that's why it's a very strong defense and depth protection here for those keys to be available in memory. Second thing is, okay, great, we've got your data protected at rest. We make sure it's only accessible in the right kind of workspace. That's great. But what about overall access? How do we protect overall access? Some of this is not specific to default storage, but the lower layers are, right? So the first step is a user must have access to a valid workspace. You cannot, as I mentioned, you cannot just get to the underlying storage layer and gain access to data, right? So we lock that down completely. So you must be on a valid workspace. And with Databricks, we support strong authentication even to access workspace. You can configure multi-factor authentication, use a third-party IDP, like whether you're using Entra or Okta. You can configure multi-factor authentication. Beyond that, even at access time, or you could call it authorization time, we have multiple factors to check. So not only do you have a valid access token, but you can configure things like IP ACLs or front-end private link with private access settings. So we check that you're coming from the right network or an IP address in addition to presenting a valid access token. So that gives you access to the workspace. How do you know it is the right workspace? In order to be the right workspace, a Unity Catalog admin should have, in an ideal world, defined a catalog binding policy. So if you go to Unity Catalog, you'll see a catalog binding policy, and explicitly specified that workspace ID as saying this workspace has access to this to this particular catalog. And as I mentioned earlier, only when that mapping is done, can the data encryption keys be materialized in that workspace. So that's your next step, is the workspace authorized. The third step is the user authorized. And this is your standard Unity Catalog policies that you define for fine-grained access control, saying who has access to data based upon their identity. So that's your user authorization step. So now you know it is the right user coming from the right location or the right workspace. At this point in time, they can have access to data. But just because they have access to data doesn't mean that they have access to the data encryption keys. The data encryption keys are still isolated away from the user code, right? They're only available in a protected section of the Databricks code. And so even the file level keys, as they're materialized in memory, are not really available to the user code by default. Right? That's how there's multiple layers of protection we provide for your access. So I just described a fairly sophisticated way of isolating your data using advanced encryption techniques and then mapping that to a combination of Unity Catalog and network security to make sure that you have a secure and isolated environment that you can work with without having to configure very complicated stuff like, thinking about S3 or ADLS storage policies. How do you configure storage firewalls? How do you define connectivity? Do you use private link on Azure or not? Or how do you do the isolation correctly for serverless, which is multi-tenant? All of this stuff you need to think about if you were to bring your own storage, right? So all of that stuff is just gone. Just because it's gone doesn't mean the security is gone with it. We actually provide pretty advanced security while taking away all of this complexity away from you. So instead of you having to go to your cloud infrastructure folks to provision a new bucket and configure all of this stuff for you so that you can now start using it, you can just have your cloud security team work with us and get default storage approved from a security standpoint. And given the advanced security capabilities we have, we would love to engage with them and explain what we have just explained to you. Once you have that approved, at that point in time, as a data team, you can just go in and start provisioning workspaces and catalogs without having to go back and forth with your infrastructure team, right? And this is where I think what Emma was talking about, the zero infrastructure journey is enabled for you, but without having to deal with, without having any degradation in security. As a matter of fact, it's possible that unless you are very careful, we are actually isolating it and securing it even better than what many of our customers can do by themselves, right? So, and lastly, there's always the concern, oh, the data is moving over to Databricks account, like I'm uncomfortable with that, right? So that's where the customer managed key piece comes in. You can establish your custodianship of the data because you own the root of the encryption key to your data. You yank that encryption key, nobody has access to it, and that encryption key lives in your account. This is, as I said, is on the roadmap, but coming soon, but that gives you that it doesn't really like necessarily improve your isolation posture, but it gives you that guarantee that the data belongs to you, right? Even as you use a managed storage offering. So with that, we'll talk a little bit about the roadmap and our vision as we move forward with the storage. I'll hand it back to Emma to talk you through that. Thank you.
Thank you, Samra. All right, let me talk through some of the roadmap and vision. And first, as Samra mentioned, we are going to add the customer managed keys for all the data assets that's stored in default storage. And the next part, as I mentioned, the default storage is optimized with serverless compute, but we're also supporting clusters accessing the data in default storage. And next, we're going to look into the backup DR with default storage, and it will be streamlined, super simple for you to achieve this backup DR. We're also looking into a direct way to ingest from the data source through an API to Delta tables in default storage. So you can also eliminate some of the landing zone bucket. And we're also looking into intelligent data lifecycle policy and storage tiering, as well as improving the performance based on the data in default storage. So let's keep a few key takeaways. First, let's look at the evolution of our architecture. As I mentioned, show you earlier, we started with bringing your compute as well as storage, and it's a shared responsibility between you and Databricks. Then we added serverless compute to simplify your life in terms of the cluster provisioning. And now we have default storage in prior preview, and it simplifies your journey for the storage. So these are all the options that you can have, and you can, in the future, you can have a hybrid architecture for your Databricks deployment. And of course, the fastest way to get started with the intelligence platform is default storage plus serverless compute. Okay. Now, two call to action. First, you can try the Databricks test drive. I have some of the invites codes here, and you can come and pick up now. Or later, you can also find these invite codes at the Databricks booth. And second, you can log into the default storage private preview form and enroll it in the private preview. And this will enable you to actually set up new workspace and catalogs in your existing account. All right, so that's all of our presentation. Thank you.